first job within mum or dad's business?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a job. It was just something you do.
It was life
You know, we'd come home from school, so we'd go straight to the shop. We'd go straight to the shop. So there's a little room at the back of the shop where we would sit, do our homework, eat or whatever.
Or if mum and dad were away, we'd be taking care of it, right?
Yeah.
We'd be
So
closing up,
how old
tilling
were
up.
you? So
Suki actually was at a market, which I think might be illegal, but
maybe not for the public viewing. Yeah, so.
we'll edit that.
But I started going to the markets when I was like 5 with my dad. He used to just take me for jokes because he used to think it was fun and whatever.
And it was quite fun,
but
actually.
It was fun.
Yeah.
I mean, you know...
Cold, but fun.
Yeah.
At 5 in the morning.
Yeah, I mean, and it was cold.
But it was busy. You know, we used to like being active. You know, we're doing stuff. You're talking to people.
Selling the jeans.
And my dad, he was such a jolly person. You know, the jokes and stuff. I remember there was one time at a market... You know what you used to have for the checkbooks, and you have the Visa printing thing.
That thing.
Anyway, so there's a checkbook, and he used to have a stamp for payable, you know, for his name. And this man goes, no, just tell
automation.
me.
Early automation.
He said, just tell me your name. I don't need the stamp. My dad says his name, Mahinder Pal Singh Dhaliwal, and he goes, where's the stamp? And stuff. But he used to just always have a jokey way, you know, like. You know, I think that's where we get it from. You know, we like talking. We like
customer service. Definitely came from that, right?
Yeah, definitely.
You know, it was always bantering. You know, whether he's selling something or buying something, it's always bantering. You know, whether it's a Tesco's or whatever. You know,
we did the banking, we did the cash and carry runs. We'd do the stock take. We would manage the employees and stuff. We'd pack stuff.
It's crazy, yeah. I mean,
and then if mum and, so there's 4 of us. So, if one of us is at the shop, the others would be at home doing housework, making sure dinner's on the table when mum and the rest of us got home, and we'd be doing our homework. So, they
had it nailed, really, didn't they?
When we say, I said to Mum used to have it easy. I mean, my kids, they do cook, but
my kids would dress themselves. Forget about cooking for everyone.
They'd come home at 7:30. They'd have dinner on the table. They'd come home, eat. Dad would have his glass of whiskey and wine. That's just standard.
Yeah. Put the news on, right?
Yeah, and that was it. But we used to all sit together, watch TV. We'd watch a movie. So
films were our thing.
Yeah, we used to always So if films were renting on a weekend. Yeah. That would be our thing. We would all watch a movie together.
Well, early years they used to have a film rental shop. And
we did everything.
I mean, literally everything.
We started with baby clothes.
Yeah.
Then it was Indian boutique clothes, and then we did shoes at some point.
Suitcases.
Then the hardware shop, films. We've sold
same
everything
shop.
in the same shop.
Same shop, and then they had a couple of different shops on the same brand. Boom.
Change it around.
Go.
And then they had this shop that they were leasing. The first one where you were born
in
Hounslow. And then further up the parade, there was another shop that was going off to freehold. So my dad bought that, then got out the lease of this, moved everything into that, and then the shop next door, the meat shop, was going for sale. But Mum and Dad didn't have the money at that point.
Like literally zero cash. They just dumped everything into this.
Dad struck up a deal with this guy.
Eddie, the
bank manager. The bank manager. He would just call him. He'd come to the house. He'd have dinner, and Dad would say, "Oh, I need a loan," and it would just be done. No paperwork, nothing. It was, it was just back in the day.
Good old days. But then they had agreed this. So Dad brokered this deal with the owner of the other shop and said, "Look, I will exchange with you now, and I will complete within a year." So they had the exchange funds at 10%. But they had no means of completing on this thing. But he's like, well, if I don't do this now, it's the neighbouring shop, we can knock it through, we can really build something here. It'll never come up again because, and frankly, it never ever came up again, right? So he does this 10% thing and gets Eddie along. Eddie's like, yep, no worries, MP, I'm going to do this for you, no problem. 3-4 months later, Eddie resigns and he retires rather. And my dad's like, look, you've got to do this for me before you retire. Like, what the hell? We're going to be broken. And he really muscled it through, got it done last minute. They begged, borrowed, and pleaded, and figured the whole thing out with the bank, with friends. It was all very much, they sorted it all out and then worked really hard. I remember going along when they were busting through the two shops, and it was they'd sort of covered everything up in one shop.
It was
we were
still
knocking
running.
through.
It was still running. While it was running, they were knocking this wall down. It was like
they basically. So
I hate
if you
to think what risk assessment.
I mean, there was no. I was about 5 years old. I didn't even have a hard hat on, and I was like ramming through these walls myself with my uncle, who's a builder. And it was just, when you think back, gosh, they're just tenacious.
He's a risk taker, and that's where Amrit gets that from. I'm always very cautious, and he's like, we can just do it.
How hard do we have to work to just make it happen? And I think actually, interestingly, I've certainly always felt like, if you just work hard enough and you run fast enough, you can do the thing. Whatever the thing is. I mean, there has to be sense and reason and whatever, but actually, if you just run hard enough, it's that, it's the endurance game. We're in the marathon game, but you just have to continuously be fast. It's not about working at a point in time. It's about doing the same thing when it gets boring, when it gets hard, when you've got something else more interesting to do. When you feel like crying in the morning, you carry on, you get up, you pick up, you keep going. And that I think is where success lies. And that is that really fine line between I'm going to work really hard now, and I'm going to just work really hard until I don't know when. And I felt like this. I'm 37 now. I was 22 when I got the restaurant, and I thought, 5 years, work hard 5 years. 5 years is not that long. I'll be 27, it'll be all right. 15 years later, still just slogging away, and it's just. But you have to enjoy it, and there has to be a bigger mission in play to say, well, this is what I'm trying to do, or achieve or create. I think that's it. It's about just keep going and saying, and the goalpost might change for you, and life changes, right? I got married, had kids, and that then created new complexities and a different lifestyle, and all of that, and it just means that you have to keep on moving.
And for the two of you, what advice would you give other siblings in business together?
I think you need to like each other before you get into that sort of relationship and have an understanding. Not all siblings can work. There's a number of people I meet and say, how are you still working with your brother? How do you still, still talk to him? Like working all these years,
It's a good question.
So I think it's really important to have a really good understanding before you go down that road, because it can be a long road otherwise.
It's a really hard thing, actually. I mean, in fact,
because you don't want it to ruin your relationship, because it's not just the business thing is going to take over your relationship if things don't work out right, and then that's much harder and a lot more to lose. It's
really hard. I think the thing I would say is have an open conversation at the beginning. So actually,
because Dad said to me before starting, obviously I said when you offered me that job, I had that conversation with Dad saying, right, Amrit offered me this job, and his main concern was that, have you thought about how that might affect your relationship? And that was what he was worried about, because obviously they've had families, they've had issues that
it's natural, normal actually.
And then I had a long think about it, because obviously I like to get Dad's advice about everything, and I did have a think about it, and then we had a chat, and I think it was really important because we had that understanding. We were able to,
and I think actually having the honest conversation, and we had a really honest conversation early doors of saying, and I said, look, this is my business. You're my older sister. Outside of work, you're in charge, right? But at work, this is how it needs to flow. I will take your opinion. I'll take your advice. The end decision is mine, which means if it goes wrong, that's on me as well. But, it has to operate like that. And also, I think for the rest of the team, they need to see that you are treating, each other as you would anyway. So if Cam is doing something great, she gets high-fived. If she's not, it can't be that that's okay, because then that's cancerous for the rest of the team. I think, actually, interestingly, also understanding whether you could work with that sibling. We've got 2 other siblings, right? No, we tried working with one of them, well, on Cam's advice, I said, look, you hire her, but you fire her, right? And I was like, here are KPIs. If she's 90 days, doesn't do it, she's out, you know. And I was like, have the conversation at the beginning, and that's okay. 90 days, Cam fired her, right? No, and
still talking.
Yeah, still talking. But you
it was
have
an
the
understanding.
conversation.
It was an understanding.
Yeah, and
so clear.
Yeah, you have to be clear. My wife's involved with a family member, but they've got it was again a CQC business, but a really clear shareholder agreement, partnership agreement. I think that's really important actually. If you're going into business with a sibling, well, what happens if one of the siblings is off long-term sick, on maternity leave, paternity leave, on holiday, and or there's more money required or anything? I think actually, just because you're siblings, it doesn't mean it's not a commercial endeavor. And really looking at it as a serious business, even before it is a really sensible thing too, because it forces you to have that discussion. And if you can't have that discussion when there's nothing, how are you going to feel when there's something, right? So I think it's
so there's the business side, and then there's the kind of what you call emotional contracting.
Yeah. And not everyone can do it, I think, because for me, and
I've always managed his money.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Even up until this day.
Even now, yeah. I mean, Cam's got more of an understanding around that, as to, and does all the payroll stuff and whatever. I'm like, great, and I think that it's really saying where is somebody, where's everyone's forte, and the thing is, running businesses is hard enough as it is, but I think, for me and Cam, I think I speak for both of us here, where we say that actually the relationship outweighs the business. The business will come, go, sell, whatever, but once a relationship is gone, it's all gone. There is nothing more important. So it's really kind of saying, okay, am I going to take a hit on that or not? And I feel like that also in all walks of life. I think about situations that I've been in with, commercial situations with staff or with anything, and you think, well, actually, rather than have it hit my emotions, I'd rather move on and get on with life, because it's better, and I think really what's important to you as a person, and really understanding that and aligning that with people.